He's been volunteering in Texas prisons for the last decade, and he's here to tell us today why most of them are not air-conditioned. His talk is called Why Prisons Aren't Air-Conditioned.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, brother. Hey, everybody. This is Larry McCollum. According to his obituary, he was a taxi cab driver from Waco, Texas, who loved fishing, going to casinos, and more than anything, his Dallas Cowboys. One thing that this big man with a heart condition did not love was the Texas heat. That's because, as the National Weather Service says, heat kills more people every year than floods, lightning, tornadoes, and hurricanes combined. And sharks. That's why it is illegal to put a child or an animal in the locked, unair-conditioned box of a turned-off car. In fact, if you do so, you will go to jail or prison, where, ironically, it is no longer considered inhumane to put a human being inside a locked, unair-conditioned box. That's something that Larry found out painfully in July 2011 when he was incarcerated for forgery, a nonviolent crime, and sentenced to 11 months in Texas prisons. Larry was entered into the Hutchins State Jail, one of 111 prisons here in the state of Texas that collectively incarcerate 120,000 people. That's more than live in the entire city of Richardson behind bars today. Only 21 of those, about 1 in 5, are air-conditioned, and Hutchins is not one of them. When Larry entered, the guards greeted him by saying, "Welcome to hell." This is the kind of place that he called home. It's a concrete box, probably with a metal roof. Now, courts around the country have determined that a cell can't get over 90 degrees without violating the constitutional rights of incarcerated citizens because they are still citizens. However, Hutchins not being air-conditioned, it was 96 degrees outside. It's estimated that that non-air-conditioned concrete box could get as hot as 130 degrees. So Larry, an overweight man with a heart condition, collapsed of a heat stroke within 3 days of entering prison. By the time he got to the hospital, his internal body temperature was 109 degrees. And within a few days, this man, who was not sentenced to death, died under state custody, just like 20 other men that we know of. If he had been a dog, someone would be in jail today for his death. But because he was an inmate, no one was held responsible. Just ask Megan Campbell, a 19-year-old who left her dog in her car while she was shopping and was incarcerated for a felony for killing an animal. Why does our country value an animal's life more than a human being who just broke the law? Now, I ask this question not because I believe prison should be vacation or inmates need to be comfortable, but because I believe that prisons are not air-conditioned for the exact same reason why 2/3 of all inmates who are released will end up returning to prison within 3 years, which is why 1 in 100 people in this country is now behind bars. And to break this broken system, we have to first understand what are the 4 purposes of prison. And we only focus on the first 3, and the 4th is the most important. Well, the first is, very clearly, punishment. Larry broke the law, and he deserved to go to prison for what he did. However, if we stop there, we can excuse his death as collateral damage. And we can then not focus on the other 3, which are far more important to our society. The second of which is prevention. The idea here is the threat of going to prison will keep people from going to prison and committing crimes. However, there are 2.2 million people in prison today, the majority of whom were already there or in some other form of jail once. So this theory is not working too well. The third is protection. The idea is that Larry was stealing from people by writing bad checks. Therefore, we need to protect ourselves from him, which is a very valid purpose of prison. But the 4th step will actually lead to long-term protection and long-term prevention of crimes, and that is rehabilitation. The idea there is that had he survived, what could prison have done to make sure Larry will never write a bad check again? And we don't ask that question as a society. We focus on the first 3 purposes of prison. And because of that, Larry is dead today, and the 2.2 million other Americans who are incarcerated have a 76% chance of returning to prison. Now, we should care about this, but we don't, because we believe rehabilitation, like air conditioning, is a luxury we can't afford. But look around this room today. Because I invited some of my friends, there are people in this theater who have a felony record. Which of these questions is more important to you now? Were they adequately punished, including exposure to unconstitutional levels of heat, or were they adequately rehabilitated? The question that I have for you is, why aren't we asking this when 95% of all people in prison will be released at some point and they will be our neighbors? Well, if we look to Sweden, of all places, their director of prison says that prison is not for punishment in Sweden. We get people into better shape. In other words, they focus on rehabilitation. And the proof of this philosophy's impact is in the prison. The inmates who are released from Swedish prisons are half as likely as American inmates to return to prison. That makes our communities safer if we invest in rehabilitation, and also because our country invests $70 billion in corrections, this would save us an enormous amount of money. Now, I ask these questions not because, again, I believe prison's vacation, but when I look at a picture of Larry on the beach with his daughter, I believe he did not deserve to die for writing a bad check. He deserved the dignity of being able to rebuild his life so he never wrote a bad check again. And our country deserves a better return on our $70 billion investment than a 76% failure rate. So write your senator, write your congressman, tweet to your president, invest in rehabilitation. Thank you.